Well, oh gosh, I was in I was in sixth grade, and on the school on Wednesdays would have half days. I can't remember if it was every Wednesday or once a month or whatever. Teachers would have, the afternoon to work. So we got out of school early that day, and I was a latchkey kid. So I went home, and a friend of mine was over, and it was like, something just isn't right. Like we knew, like, the weather was wrong. Everything just felt wrong about that day, that afternoon when we got home. And I was so scared. I think my dad kind of referred to it a little bit in his article, but he worked up the street at Combustion Engineering, which is right off of Prospect Hill Road. And I knew he was really close, so if I needed him to come home, I called him. I was like, I'm so scared, Daddy. I don't know what to do, but something's not right. It's going to be windy. It's going to be terrible. I don't know what's happening. And so I had called another friend who lived off of Hollowbrook Road up in Pequannock, and I said, oh my gosh, what's going on over there? Are you guys okay? Because I knew that they were home alone too, she and her brother. And we were all scared. We were just a bunch of latchkey kids waiting for, our parents to come home, and we knew something bad was happening with this weather. So we were just waiting. We were like, what's happening? The rain started coming, and it was so windy, and we were just like huddling in the basement, because that was my dad said, go down into the basement, it'll be all right. And we went down there, and it sounded just the total cliche. It sounded like a train was coming through. And I would say it wasn't even maybe 15 minutes, and then it was quiet. And we were almost afraid to go upstairs, and we were like, well, we can't just stay down here. So we went upstairs, and it was just a mess. Trees were everywhere. There wasn't a lot of damage in my neighborhood. We lived in Tobacco Ridge, which was off Prospect Hill Road, just a little bit north of Pequannock Avenue. And we just had like trees down, bushes, yard stuff blown all over the place. And we're like, okay, everything seems to be safe. And then the phone started ringing. We didn't have power, but the phone still worked. And the phone started ringing. Are you okay? Is everything all right? My mother worked down in Windsor Center, and I guess it wasn't as bad in Windsor Center as it was up in Pequannock. I said, Mom, you're not going to believe it. There's just stuff everywhere. But I just remember this feeling of terror. We just didn't know what was going on. I don't know, like, if we got the power back or when we got power back, but my dad ended up coming home from work probably within an hour after, it hit, after that, 15 minutes of sheer terror. And he came home, and that's when we started talking, like, what is this? What kind of storm is this? And, I obviously I knew what a tornado was. I just didn't think that was something that happened in Connecticut. That's Dorothy in The Wizard of Oz is a tornado. One of my best friends, her name was Amy, she lost her house. She lived on Hollowbrook Road, and her mother's car ended up in a tree. And we couldn't really drive over to the neighborhood, so we got on our bikes. My dad and I and a couple of the other neighbors, we got on bikes, and we went over to we crossed over the bridge on Pequannock Avenue and went into the neighborhood, which for some reason I can't remember, but I know it was Hollowbrook Road, over there by Pequannock School. And it was like walking into a movie set. Like, it just, nothing looked real. And, trees were down. It just looked like somebody picked everything up and slammed it down into the ground. And I just remember feeling so sad. And, we got scared. And then now this sadness, because our friends lost their houses and cars and everything they owned. Clothes were all over the street. It just burned into my memory. But the thing that was the most and I hate to sound dramatic, but traumatic of it was that the elementary school that we had been in just a few hours before was totally demolished. We had been in Pequannock school, and there were windows broken, and the playground was just destroyed. And we looked at it and we were like, what are we going to do? We didn't want to go to school. we knew we couldn't go to that school. What was going to happen to us? So I guess, after a few weeks, maybe it was a week or so, I don't know, they ended up announcing that the kids that went to Pequannock school were going to be transferred up to the old Roger Wilcott Annex, which isn't there anymore. There was the old Roger Wilcott school, and they had built a new one, so the old building was empty. So that's where some of the elementary classes for Pequannock ended up going for the rest of the school year until they rebuilt the school.
Wow.
So,
what was that like?
We were sixth graders, so we were the old kids in the school. We were getting ready to go off to, we knew this was our last year at Pequannock, and we were the big men on campus, and that whole feeling of being, the big kids at school was just taken away from us because of that tornado. The sixth grade went to Roger Wilcott, and I think maybe fourth, fifth, and sixth went to Roger Wilcott, and then I don't remember where the lower grades went. But there we were in this strange school, in this strange part of town, which, for a kid, Pequannock up to Wilson was a million miles away. We had this long bus ride, and which, it's all relative at the time. It seemed like it was, forever, when really it was just a few miles. But it was crazy. Like, nothing was the same. We didn't have our own cafeteria. We didn't have a gym. We didn't have anything that, we were traditionally used to. And, of all the things that happened, of all the loss and devastation, I think one of the things for, at least my friends and I, especially my friends that lost their homes and, their belongings, was that it took away a little bit of our childhood, because we were in Pequannock school as sixth graders for a couple of weeks, and then that's it. We had nothing. We went to Wilcott, and after that, it was middle school. We went to Sage Park, so we never had that true goodbye to our elementary school. Well, one thing I remember is my dad and some of the other people in our neighborhood got together and just went over there and just started cleaning up, cutting the trees, stacking wood, just bagging garbage, as much cleanup as they could do. But the one thing I remember is I guess it was the Red Cross showing up and just, handing out coffee and hot cocoa to the adults and to the kids. And this tragedy ended up bringing a community together, and some of my friends that were just school friends became like siblings, and some of them stayed at my house for a little while, a couple days here and there. They ended up having to live in apartments, so it was nice to be able to come home to somebody's house and have a home cooked meal, and that my mother would make meals for some of the families, and it wasn't just us. It was everybody did that. Everybody pitched in and helped. But it was the weeks afterwards. There was just this feeling, and even as a kid, I could tell that there was something about there was a bond that was formed, and just the simple act of bringing someone a lasagna or helping cleaning up their backyard, they were forever grateful, and it was always, and in the years after that, it was like, hey, remember when after the tornado we did this, or we had that sleepover or whatever, or remember that day. It was always oddly, after the initial shock wore off, after a few years, and you could see everything rebuilding, in some strange way, it became almost a fond memory of healing and compassion. And, now here it is. I can't believe I'm saying 40 years later. But, still clear in my mind is how it became such a an important time in my family's life.